Hello, my amazing Algebra 1 students. Do we have an easy and fun lesson tonight? We are doing Lesson 9, and we're working on rules for multiplication and division of signed numbers. So now let's start with an intuitive example. So we know that multiplication is repeated addition, don't we? So we know that 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 3 groups of 2, which is the same thing as 3 times 2 is 6. Okay, 3 groups of 2 is 6, and 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6, and we can see that. All right, 3 plus 3 is 2 groups of 3, and 3 plus 3 is 6, so 2 groups of 3 is 6. 2 times 3 is 6. So now how does this apply when we have negative numbers? Okay, so here we have a negative 3 plus a negative 3, and when we add two negatives together, we get a negative 6. Okay, if we were doing this on the number line, it would go backwards 3 steps and backwards another 3 steps and give us a negative 6. So 2 groups of negative 3 is a negative 6. So here we have an example that a positive number times a negative number yields a negative number. Okay, and then let's look at another example. We have a negative 2 plus a negative 2 plus a negative 2 is a negative 6. Well, we can see that on the number line. So that is 3 groups of negative 2, or 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. So a positive number times a negative number is a negative number. But we also know that multiplication is commutative, which means that it does not matter in which order we do it. We will receive the same answer. So if 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, then negative 3 times 2 is also negative 6. And negative 2 times 3 is also a negative 6. In other words, I can switch the order in which I do them. But let's look at the pattern. I multiplied 2 positives together, and I got a positive. 2 positives together, and I got a positive. And then I multiplied a positive and a negative and a positive. If I switch them around, I get a negative number. The only one that's very difficult for us to see is a negative number times a negative number. But we are told by the laws of algebra that that will be a positive number. So right now, just take that and don't worry about it too much. Just kind of trust it. And then later on, when you know a little bit more algebra, we'll be able to show you that negative times negative is positive. But right now, just accept it. Okay? So here are our multiplication rules for signs. If we take a positive times a positive, we get a positive, and you saw that one right there. And then when we took a positive times a negative, we got a negative, and you saw that right there. And then I talked to you about how the multiplication is commutative, so that means a negative times a positive must also give you a negative, which is right here. The only one I asked you to really take on faith is this one right here. Negative times negative is a positive, okay? So our rules basically boil down to positive times positive is positive and negative times negative is positive. So could we reason that if we have the same signs and we're multiplying them together, whether they're both positive or they're both negative, we will get a positive sign? Okay? And positive times negative is negative, and negative times positive is negative. So could we say that opposite signs will always give us a negative result or negative product? And that's a good rule because that's true. Okay, so here let's go to another fact that we need to remember, that multiplication and division are inverses. Okay, so we know that if I take 2 times 3 is 6, and then I can undo that by saying 6 divided by 3 is 2, or 6 divided by 2 is 3, right? We know that multiplication and division are inverses. Well, guess what? It works with our signs as well. So if I know that a positive times a positive is a positive, then could I come down here and undo that by saying a positive divided by a positive is also a positive? And that's true. Okay, so negative times negative is a positive. Well, if I can undo that, it's an inverse operation, then positive divided by a negative should be negative. Positive divided by a negative is a negative, okay, because they are inverses of each other. So then we come over here and we've got, okay, well, positive times a negative is a negative. We already saw that on the other board. So if we undid that, wouldn't negative divided by a negative be a positive? And it is, okay? And then multiplying negative times a positive is a negative. Negative divided by a positive is a negative, and that's true. So, wow, we have the same thing going on in both of them. So let's look for a second. Let's see if we can come up with the pattern. Remember that here, going back to this board, this one is true and this one is true. So could we say that anytime we're multiplying the same signs together, we're going to get a positive outcome? We're multiplying two negatives, that's the same sign. Negative times negative, we get a positive. So that's the rule. When we have two negative numbers or two positive numbers that we're multiplying together, since they're the same sign, we will always get a positive product. And when we are doing opposite signs, so if we say negative times a positive is a negative, positive divided by negative is a negative. When we have opposite signs, we get a negative. And then over here on this board, we have opposite signs, we get a negative. Doesn't matter which one's on the top and which one's on. If we have opposite signs, we get a negative quotient. Okay, so basically it works out both ways. So here's the rule. And then we're going to do some practice. Summary. Whether dividing or multiplying, doesn't matter, it works both ways. Like signs yield positive number. So the positive product or quotient, if we are multiplying like signs or dividing like signs, we will get a result that is positive. If we are multiplying unlike signs or dividing unlike signs, we will get a negative result. That's pretty cool, right? Pretty easy to remember. Same signs, positive when we're dealing with multiplication or division, and opposite signs, negative. All right, let's practice. Here are our first four practice problems at the back part of lesson 9. So here we have negative 4 times 2. What we want to take note of is they are opposite signs. Opposite signs, when we're multiplying or dividing, will yield a negative result. So negative is the sign and 8 is the numeral part. Okay, so negative 8 is the answer. Positive times negative, opposite signs. Negative is the sign. 3 times 2 is 6. Easy. Okay, negative times positive is a negative sign. 4 times 3 is 12. Okay, so we can pretty much do the sign and then do the number. Easy, easy, easy. Okay, negative 3 times the negative 5, same sign. They're both negative, positive result. 3 times 5 is 15. We got 4 more, but that's it. That's all there is to it. Pretty simple. Okay, so here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 quotients that we need to find because we're dividing. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and they are the same sign, so it is positive. Negative 6 divided by 3, since I have a negative and a positive opposite signs, it's going to be a negative. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 8 divided by a negative 4, I've got a positive divided by a negative, so that's going to be a negative sign. Opposite signs are negative. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And lastly, negative divided by negative, same sign, we'll get a positive result. 16 divided by 2 is 8. And that is all there is to this lesson. That is the end of lesson 9. I hope you are going to have fun with that homework. This is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day.